Hi, this is Anatole, and this is my review of Twilight Zone, the original series, Season 1, Episode 7, titled The Lonely, broadcast November 13th, 1959, and it received a score of 8.3 on IMDb. And first, let's mention the guest acting and the guest star of the episode, which was Jack Warden, and I really liked his performance in this. He is not a method actor, but he could emote in a way that a method actor would emote. So he was capable of handling very serious roles and performing naturally. And I can recall him doing Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty, which was a comedy. I feel like he was in other comedies, which would mean he could do both drama and comedy, which is uncommon. Could do them well. But and then I also want to note that in the background there is the comedic actor Ted Knight, who later went on to do Mary Tyler Moore. But about the content of the episode, this episode was something of a puzzle box for me, and in that when I finished it, I had a conception of the meaning of the episode, and then when I read more about the making of it and what Rod Serling intended, there were deeper mysteries that were revealed to me, which was quite the surprise. So in my discussion of the episode, I'm using two sources for my research. The first is the Twilight Zone Companion, which I mentioned my last review. And then in the interim, I picked up the book Twilight Zone Guiding the Imagination. Hold on, I don't have the title straight. Unlocking the Door to the Imagination, which is a wonderful book, quite expensive, $40 paperback, and it was $25 on Kindle. But it informed me. It's a very well-researched, detailed book, and it revealed a lot about the episode that I wasn't able to discern, which is good. So the writer. So let's talk about what I mean that the episode kind of fooled me. There were a couple points where there's a little bit of a mystery, and Rod Serling does not spell out the answer to that mystery. The first is if the main character of Corey is really a murderer or not, where we're never told. He has been convicted of murder, but we're not sure that the side of justice is and the side of law are together. That there's every indication that the society he lives in is not a just one, and so we're shown that there are people in his society that have compassion. A man who's responsible for his care on the asteroid, Captain Allenby, is quite compassionate towards him. It doesn't mean that he takes the side of Corey, but he tries to provide him with comforts even when he's breaking the rules to do it. But then we also see the voice of maybe the common person, and that is the people who are the privates. I'm not sure what their technical designation is, but the people who are working under Allenby, the captain. So if they're a captain, maybe they're soldiers, and they have quite the opposite attitude. In fact, Ted Knight plays quite the prig, and everything that can be said about the main character Corey, Ted Knight does. You can see he's quite biased against him. But we're left with doubt because Corey says that he's innocent. He didn't murder. And my turning point where I was willing to believe Corey is when he showed empathy, because he's shown going stir crazy on this asteroid, which was shot in Death Valley, by the way. And there's quite a bit of behind the scenes detail about the shooting, the 2-day shooting in Death Valley. A spoiler, it was not fun for the crew. But so he's shown as being stir crazy, and he wants to do anything he can to get these people to stay so he can just have someone to talk to. And when he's told that they have only a 15-minute window because if they miss that window, they're stuck on the asteroid, it seems like his main concern, Corey's, is that this would be a boon for him. So it seems like he is a self-centered individual. We don't know if he's the kind of innocent person who that we would assume would have empathy. But yet at the very end, when they're leaving and he says thank you, even though he's quite dejected, that does show he has some empathy. So that was the mystery of it, whether he's a murderer or not. in my mind, got solved there. It's never spelled out, but I felt that he was innocent. That's what we would expect anyway of a main character, that he's going to be innocent so that we can have our sympathy for them. And then the second point on whether this robot had genuine feelings or not, I thought was also decided at the very end when the sergeant, Allenby, says, well, or I can't remember if it's Allenby or Corey, but to show him something, he says to the robot, Alicia, played by Jean Marsh, a British actress who's been in Doctor Who, among other things, and she can't reply in the way that a human would reply. So that would seem to be a failure of creativity, which is one mark of humanity. And what separates them from artificial intelligence is creativity, the ability to make that leap and see beyond irony and paradox or make intuitive decisions. And she seems unable to do that. So when he shoots her so that Corey will be able to leave and won't have any attachment for her, and we see her shut out face as all these wires, and Allenby says you have to remember that she was only a robot, and Corey dejectedly, or it's actually kind of straight face, says, I will have to remember that. I will have to remember that. It seems decided that Rod is on the side of robots not being genuine life, and that any life she had was invented by Corey out of his desperation and loneliness, which in turn would seem to be indictment against cruel and unusual punishment. That's the reason why he's freed from the asteroid. The society he's a part of has made the decision that it is cruel and unfair. And the fact that Rod Serling seems to imply the robot is not anything more than just a machine like the car he's leaving behind. And the only reason she was alive was because Corey was near desperation for any semblance of humanity. Again, seems more of an indictment against... Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Let me turn off the sound if you're hearing that. That's my Instagram. By the way, my Instagram, if you care to add me, is Instagram at anatole'spenthouse. I've turned off the sound to my computer, so there should not be any more beeps. And yet, what I felt were decided issues were decidedly not decided, if that makes sense. So, reading from the book Twilight Zone, Unlocking the Door to Imagination, here's a quote that seems to undo that theory of mine, the set conclusion that Rod Serling considered the robot was not the same as human. Regarding the words that Corey reads, quote, to all intents and purposes, this creature is a woman, which is what Corey says. The DeForest report commented, quote, since creature refers to a living being, this line states that the robot has become a woman and thus is subject to moral laws. The report suggested deleting the word creature, but Serling kept the line intact, implying that creature does regard the robot to be a creature, to have life, equivalent to human life, which then puts the action of the sergeant, as well intentioned as it was, in a whole new light, and in fact flips the script, reverses the role. It makes the sergeant a killer, and Corey the one that should sit judgment upon the sergeant. And then regarding the question on whether Corey was a murderer, which I felt he was not, quote from the same book. When Serling adapted his teleplay for more stories from the Twilight Zone, a paperback collection of short stories for Bantam Books in April of 1961, Serling added details regarding Corey's crime that got him sentenced to the asteroid. Corey witnessed the death of his wife from a speeding car, which wrecked shortly after. Corey dragged the driver out of the vehicle and choked him to death. In the teleplay, the only reference to Corey's crime is when the convict remarked that it was, quote, self-defense, end quote. So here it would seem to be more an act of revenge or a murder of passion than it would be self-defense. But that again also seems to undo my theory that Corey was an innocent man and that he was more than he was unjustly imprisoned. and maybe the greater humanity lay with Corey than with the sergeant. But all these reversals really seem to complicate what Serling was trying to communicate, although in the end it does seem he was adamant on the point that the robot had the equal life to humanity. Just to what moral level humanity can claim to be justifiably at, I think he draws question upon, because it seems that the robot is more humane than the humans that dispatch with it so casually and treat it as such property. In fact, Corey, because Corey treats her as a human, he also gains a stature that the others don't have. But wow, what a complex set of moral questions that Rod Serling was investigating in this episode. And I like that he leaves it all buried and unanswered. He doesn't give you what his viewpoint is. He gives hints on where his sympathies lie, even if he is complicating those. It does seem like his sympathies lie with Corey, but the fact that he later wrote that Corey was a murderer, although I think in a way that many of us can still have empathy for the fact he was killing the killer of his wife, I think some people would feel is justified, even if society does not. In the end, Serling doesn't weigh in upon any of that and leaves it all very ambiguous. When Corey just stares off and says, "I must remember that, I must remember that," we don't know if he's being genuine or if it's defeated irony. We just don't know. So, wow, that's an episode to think about. And given what other shows later on, especially Black Mirror, which is directly inspired by the Twilight Zone, where they seem to take a stronger line that artificial intelligence is very close to humanity. The fact that Rod Serling left it so buried, I'm not sure if it's because he felt that he would be too far ahead of the audience. I suspect that may have been it, or if he just wanted to leave it buried within the text and let the audience decide on their own. Not sure, but what a great episode. That's it for my review of Twilight Zone Season 1, Episode 7, The Lonely. I hope you'll join me next time when I review the classic Time Enough at Last. So until then, take care and be well. Goodbye.